you what, in lieu of, obviously, we're going to have the election of chairman and all that, but before we do that, can we just have a quick roll call of everyone who's here? So if you can just say your name, and we'll start with those who are on the video screen first.
Okay, Steve Watt.
Mike Coates, Senior Officer Environmental Health.
Linda Banfield, Senior Officer Licensing.
Steve Sims. And Tim Dean.
Frank Bushett.
Jonathan Smith on the phone.
I think Adrian is there somewhere. Adrian Davis on the phone.
Is that everyone? Well, Fran, I'll let you, the Vice Chairman of Council, I'll call upon you to take us forward.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the Licensing Committee this morning. And I'd like to, first of all, take the first election of chairman for 2021. And I would also like to nominate Councillor Watt to continue his role for the following year, please.
I'll happily second that.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. So, are there any other nominations for the role of licensing chairman for the following year, please? Right. Are there any objections to the continuation of licensing chairman in the position of Councillor Watt for the following year, please? And I will take that as unanimous. Congratulations, Councillor Watt. Thank you very much for continuing in the role. I'd like to hand the meeting to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chairman. I'd just like to say thanks for your confidence. Let's hope we can get through the rest of this council year without too many problems. Right, item number 2 on the agenda is election of Vice Chairman. I'd like to nominate Councillor Tim Dean.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other nominations for the post or position of Vice Chairman? Are there any objections to Councillor Dean? Then I announce that is carried. So welcome Tim Dean as Vice Chairman. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No. Item number 4 then. The minutes of the previous meeting. This was on the 9th of January. As members recall, this was virtually solely concerned with the commercial voting policy, which was approved at that meeting. The minutes are in front of you. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, so I can take it that we confirm that is a correct record of those minutes of the Licensing Committee of the 9th of January. Right, I have, item number 5 now. No, I have no urgent...
Sorry, Chairman, can we just go back? Technically, you need a proposer and a seconder to confirm the minutes.
The meeting on 9th of January, quite correct.
I'll happily propose that they're a true record. That's Councillor Sims.
Lovely.
And a seconder, please.
I'll second that, Councillor Tim Dean, Vice Chair.
No other objections, or no objections, not other ones. No objections to that proposal, then that is now confirmed. Item number 5, I have no urgent items, so we move swiftly on to item 6, which is the main body of the meeting today, which is the licensing policy for the Isles of Scilly, pages 5 to 60. Before we start, could I just mentioned a couple of three minor amendments. Two of them are relatively minor. They're concerned with the number of elected members. I believe there were typo mistakes in paragraph 5.1 and also in paragraph 6. It should read 15 elected members and not 10, as in 5.1, and not 11, as in 6. We have 15 elected members on our committee. And the third amendment is on paragraph 3.16, where it mentions the proposal for event licenses should go to the Transport, Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee. Well, we no longer have that committee. So that doesn't exist. Now, I've wondered about this morning and spoken to the Vice Chairman a couple of times about this. And neither of us came up with a definitive answer. But I'm wondering if this could possibly be changed to the Community Safety Partnership, or whether members have a different idea. There is no equivalent committee precisely to the Transport, Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee, so we're in a bit of a quandary here. So I'll pass it over to members for any suggestions.
Sorry I'm late, Chairman.
Yeah, welcome to the meeting, Councillor Monson. I've just pointed out a couple of minor amendments to two typos in the report, 5.1 and 6, and also referring now to the 3.16, the fact that we no longer have a Transport, Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee to refer to. So I'm wondering if an alternative could be the Community Safety Partnership. So any suggestions within that partnership would, of course, have to come to full council anyway, which meets monthly. So any members have any ideas or difference of opinion on that? Yes, Fran. I think you're muted, Fran.
Thank you. Difficult to remember, isn't it? With the acquiescence of the licensing officer and the environmental health officer and Nicholas Denton, if she's with us, which I think she was, I would suggest we probably need to ask the monitoring officer before we recommend the Community Safety Partnership, just in case there's any reason why this wouldn't be a good idea. I can't think of anything else, quite frankly.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, just to say, with the Community Safety Partnership, there's also a link to like a transport safety group with the Five Islands Academy. So there could be some transport safety links with that, if that helps.
I think a crossover like that would be useful, particularly as the original committee included transport, economic development and infrastructure. So any crossover like that would certainly be helpful. So I like the Vice Chairman's idea of referring it firstly to the monitoring officer for his comments on that, to see which committee or could slot into. It is, by the way, I should have mentioned which paragraph it is. It's paragraph 3.16, at the bottom of agenda pack, page 21. It's to determine whether consent is given to any events which are proposed, event planning, in other words. It actually mentions later in that paragraph that as that committee only meets 3 or 4 times per year, early event planning and application is advisable. So I think early application is always advisable, whether it only meets 3 or 4 times or whether it meets monthly. But anyway, that's another thing. But yes, Mike, your hands up.
Just say that throughout the year, Steve, that there is like safety advisory groups, event safety advisory groups, so there could be a link with those as well, to an extent. how you would do that.
Well, that's interesting because I'm on the HASAG as well as on the Community Safety Partnership, so I'm on both those committees.
Yeah, and the World Gig Championship, when that happens, again, and there's lots of other events like that which have SAG groups.
Hello? Right, well, I propose then that we in the first instance, refer to the monitoring officer to get his advice on that. But in principle, it seems that members are in agreement that, at least principally anyway, it could go to the Community Safety Partnership. Mike, your hand's up again? Or was that a legacy hand up? It was a legacy. I love that phrase. Okay, well that's those amendments sorted out. Perhaps I'll hand over to Linda Banfield for her comments on the report.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you here. I'm not going to read the report word for word. I would trust that you've all read through. We're here today to have a look at the licensing policy for its 5-year review and to go through the recommendations that the members review the consultation responses submitted and take the responses into account in reviewing the licensing policy, and that members approve the reviewed licensing policy set out in Appendix A for submission to full council for adoption. If you would like to take that forward, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. I wonder if members have any comments on some of the points mentioned in the consultation near the back of the report. Appendix C. First of all, on the licensing policy 2025, etc., a request that that we adopt the HALO project, which is Cornwall Health as a licensing objective, which was originally adopted by Cornwall Council, but my understanding is that that is no longer, in fact, in place because HALO was not actually finalised by the government. I can actually, as a licensing objective, it's not part of Cornwall College's licensing policy at the moment. The scheme was rejected by the government, and it's now regarded as legally unenforceable, which is a comment made in the column department notes in there. Similarly, in Scotland, as a point of interest, it was rejected totally in Scotland when it was first proposed in, I think it was 2017, because of the perception within the licensing trade that it was an attempt to turn licensees into health practitioners. So it was never actually adopted fully by Cornwall. It has actually changed its name now. I noticed in the Cornwall policy it's now called HILT, H-A-I-L-T, which stands for Health Impact Licensing Tool. But I'm not sure how much weight that carries within Cornwall's policy. I don't know whether if Linda could enhance that.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Somebody's just come in. I'm just shutting the door. Sorry. I think you've pretty much covered it all, Steve. I mean, you can't have a licensing objective that hasn't been approved by a government, that hasn't been gone through statute. Therefore, it is completely unenforceable. But you'll see in my comments that I feel that it is something that we can always bear in mind when we are processing licensing application. Whilst we can't necessarily enforce it, there are elements of it that certainly should always be borne in mind when you are assessing applications.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I quite agree. I didn't mean we should ignore it altogether, but maybe possibly in the future we could refer to the HILT project within Cornwall. So, Fran, I think your hand is up.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like it minuted that the Health and Wellbeing Board did have a look at the policy in some detail when it was the HALO policy. And we did consider as a Health and Wellbeing Board that there was a lot of good work within the policy. So if there was a way of recognising that it had a place for consideration, whilst recognising that it didn't actually have any legal validity as a document and an objective, as the licensing officer states, I think that would be very valuable if colleagues agree that we actually agree that the HALO work was valuable and something that we should be taking note of.
Yes, thank you, Fran. Yeah, I quite agree with that. And maybe, as I mentioned at the beginning, we look at the way the Hilt is working within Cornwall and possibly adopt some of those ideas. The second thing in that particular section is the suggestion that we adopt a late night levy, which is from midnight to 6 a.m. I've done some checking on this. Only 10 local authorities in the country have them in place, and 5 of those are actually in London. And it was actually originally introduced by the coalition government, and it should apply to all licensed premises in the area. Although, having said that, in 2017 the government recommended that councils could target specific local areas rather than the whole area within its jurisdiction. But it's yet to be agreed. The House of Lords, interestingly enough, the House of Lords Select Committee recommended that late night levy be scrapped altogether because it had failed to meet its objectives, but the government disagreed and said in 2017 again that it would start to apply the conditions, but not until, and I quote, extensive consultation. Well, to my best of my knowledge, that's yet to happen. It was previously known, incidentally, as Alcohol Disorder Zones, ATZ. But that was introduced by the coalition government, but they were not adopted by a single local authority, and so were abandoned there and then. So I realise that antisocial behaviour, particularly after closing time, is a hot topic certainly on St Mary's. In the column department note, it mentions it would be up to elected members to decide if a late night levy was needed and financially viable. As I said, only 10 local authorities in the country have actually adopted this at the moment. There is a sliding scale of charges, incidentally, to late night licenses based on your rateable value. So I'm assuming that the larger pubs would be in some of the higher rates and could be anything between £2,500 to £4,500 a year. The income generated, incidentally, 30% is recommended within that late night levy idea. That 30% is retained by the local authority and 70% goes to the local police or police commissioner to fund their operations after midnight, or between midnight and 6 a.m. in the morning, should it be needed. But as I said, only 10 local authorities in the UK have actually adopted it, and only 5 outside London. So I don't know what members' ideas are on this. Pass it over to members. Fran, your hand is up first.
Yes, sorry, I seem to be saying rather a lot this morning, so apologies for that, colleagues. I think at 1.4 and 1.5, none of us would disagree that on this small island we are balancing economic health and the viability of businesses with the consideration of the needs of the residents who live close to those businesses. I think we have all been approached by residents who are disturbed by late night noise, and so for us we have to decide how we can fully recognise their needs while maintaining a viable business community. The issue seems to mainly coalesce around people leaving late at night, having had, quite frankly, sometimes rather a lot to drink, possibly more than they should have had to drink. Now, it seems to me that by promoting the idea of a late night levy, we're actually handing the problem to the police. we have a limited number of police here and they have a range of activities to fulfil. It seems to me that what we're actually doing if we put the late night levy on is to say we recognise that there's going to be a problem with late night noise and disturbance, which is one of the licensing objectives is the prevention of public nuisance. So we actually accept that one of the licensing objectives has not been complied with. And then we actually hand it to the police and say, please, can you do something about it? Now, it seems to me in a nutshell that this actually isn't fair and that perhaps what we should be doing is taking a more proactive role in whatsoever way we can to actually monitor the TENS notices which give any premises the ability to open later in the evening. If we gave a TENS and it gave rise at whichever venue to a raft of justifiable and not vexatious complaints, but justifiable complaints, and they are out there, and sometimes from people who are not of complaining mode and have obviously been driven to the limits of their tolerance. If we monitor it, it should be possible, if we have a raft of complaints about 110, to seriously consider whether it's appropriate to grant any more for a particular duration, while the business in question, wheresoever that might be, seriously considers how it's going to address the problem. And I do believe that on occasion, businesses are not strict enough in actually not selling alcohol to people who have already had too much. Thank you. Sorry for that rather long intervention.
Linda, before I come to Avril, Linda, you got your hand up.
I listened to your comments there, Fran, and that is currently the case. All temporary event notices, any complaints that are received by the licensing office, there is a record. Any complaints received by the police, there is a record. When a temporary event notice comes in, it has to be approved by the local authority, by the licensing team from the Southwest. They have the power, if there is a regular raft of complaints that prove that a temporary event notice is at a particular premises are causing a nuisance, they can decline them. And they often do.
Thank you, Linda. Avril, your hand's up.
Yes. I think the problem we have is that when they leave the pub, it is not the pub's responsibility. It becomes I imagine it comes under the environment somehow. I mean, we never used to have this problem when the police were actually out and about, but they are not out and about after 10 o'clock at night anymore. At the moment, if there's any noise, it's happening at 10 o'clock, which is not so bad because you don't get woken up. Well, I don't get woken up because I haven't gone to bed. But in normal circumstances, I mean, we haven't had so much of a problem. In normal circumstances, in my view, all we need is a police presence. Now, how we go about getting that, I don't know. I have spoken to the police, but they don't seem to think that they have to do it after 10 o'clock. But just a police presence would actually calm everything down a bit. And it's very difficult to tell at the moment because everywhere's shutting at 10 o'clock or should be shut by 10 o'clock. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know how to do it, but I still feel that we should have police presence after 10 o'clock at night. There must be somebody on duty all night, so I can't see why they can't either be in the post office archway or underneath our front door. I don't know whether perhaps some communication with the police might help. What do you think, Linda?
I actually don't necessarily disagree with you on that, Avril, but I'd just like to reassure you all that I am working very, very closely with the police. They have also recently, at a meeting that we attended, Pub Watch has now been re-established. It is going very well. It was handed over at the last Pub Watch meeting. It is now being managed by the licensees. This year, the chairman will be Richard Smith from the Salonian Club. As I say, we work very closely. I attend all of those meetings. They all have my mobile number that they can call me whenever they need to if there are any problems. And the police have requested, and it's something that I'm looking into, whether I can get permission for extra hours or whether I take some of my day hours to do it. But they have requested that I go out on patrol with them so that I can make my presence known to the licensee so that they are being monitored.
Michael, your hands up.
Yeah, just to reiterate that we do work closely with the police, and I am aware they do some patrols till midnight, so that they are doing patrols. Yeah.
Okay.
Avril, your hands next.
No, I'm down.
So, sorry, Fran. Fran, you're on mute.
Oh dear, sorry. Just to say, I'll just draw. That's very reassuring, the comments from both Mike and from Linda, so thanks for that. And I'm really pleased to hear that Pubwatch has effectively been reinvigorated, because I think that would be really, if licensees could take the responsibility for monitoring themselves, it's obviously much better. But I would draw colleagues' attention to 3.29, where it says applications will be determined having regard to the promotion of licensing objectives. One of those licensing objectives is the prevention of public nuisance. Now, regardless of whether or not it is theoretically possible to link behaviour to the news, it does seem that a bit more work on this would be quite useful. And also, secondary to that, it also says that the operating schedule for a particular premises must include measures to minimise and control noise from clients who are both arriving and leaving the premises. So there is that little window of opportunity to have another look at this area, I think. Thank you.
Linda?
I think that the difficulty we've got with your comments there, Fran, it's the leaving and arriving. That's the leaving and arriving at the premises. It doesn't mean when they have, let's say, for instance, they've left the Bishop and Wool, that it doesn't mean that by the time they've reached St Mary's Hall, they should still be monitored. It's them leaving and arriving in the immediate vicinity of the premises. And I think this is where people need to bear that in mind. Once they have left the vicinity of the premises, it is no longer the responsibility of the licensee.
Okay, Linda, thank you for that. Any more comments on the possibility of imposing a late-night license, late-night levy, rather? Could I just remind you that the government haven't yet defined whether authorities can apply it to a particular area within their jurisdiction. But at the moment, as far as I understand, if a late-night levy is imposed, it would apply to every licensed premises within its jurisdiction. But there is, however, a little let-out, for instance, village pubs and fetes and so on, which have little which the local authority have no problems with. But having said that, at the moment, we've got no clear, as I understand, we have no clear direction from the government over the way in which late-night levies should be imposed. Fran, your hands up again.
Yes, sorry, Chairman, but thank you, everyone. I'd just like to add a recommendation, given that businesses at the moment are in a very difficult economic position with regard to COVID. But nevertheless, we recognise that we've got a problem and we intend to deal with it. May I suggest that we give some thought to a third recommendation, which is that we approve the policy, but we add a recommendation that we give due consideration to the issue of late-night noise and disturbance and consider at the next licensing committee, in view of the evidence that we have discussed and collated, that a late-night levy might be appropriate. So in other words, we pause the late-night levy, we don't turn it down, and we just see if licensees themselves can come up with appropriate measures to help us before we go down this rather draconian route, which would pull all licensed premises into the loop, and that doesn't, to me, seem fair.
Tim Dean, your hands up.
Yeah, Fran's kind of stole my thunder a bit there, really. I think, with the economic climate that we're in at the moment, I think the last thing we need to do is basically impose another tax on businesses that are struggling already. And I think we all know that pubs in general, even in normal times, are struggling a bit anyway. And to be honest, I think that the problem is no worse than it's ever been here. I think there are always going to be people that make a bit of a racket when they come out of the pub. And like Avril said, the police should be out and about, and so the means are already there to deal with that. So I think this is a bit of a non-entity, really, myself. I think it's a bit of a dead end. I think we should not even just defer it. I think we should just not even think about it. That's my opinion. There you go.
Steve, can I just get my oar in a minute?
Yeah, sure. Carry on.
I think I've been having this conversation since I got on the council in 2013, and I'm sure if Marion was in here, she'd be saying it since she got on the council in 1215. So I don't think obviously it's not something we can ignore, but I think we have to be aware that try as we might, you cannot stop people being noisy when they're a bit drunk and they're going home sometimes, and it's we have to be aware of it, but we also have to be aware that there is no absolute solution to this.
Right, Coates, you want to come back?
Yeah, just so we did have a conversation with the police, and they didn't think a late night levy was needed with the amount of complaints or whatever between midnight and 6 a.m. So just something to bear in mind, that maybe when we're looking at this, to see what the actual stats are on problems between midnight and 6 a.m. with the police. So.
Linda, your hands up.
What I'm going to say now is probably going to be quite emotive to some, but what we also have to take into consideration is that everybody's interpretation of noise and the level of noise that upsets them is very different. So what might upset you, I might think is not a problem. So it's very difficult. It would be very difficult from the way I look at it to be able to say that we need to have a late night levy based on noise nuisance, because noise nuisance is we appreciate we have had a problem in the past. And I have worked tirelessly over the last 2 years, particularly since I came back to work. I work very closely with the police. I communicate 2 or 3 times a week with them. We touch base on every incident that happens, and from their point of view, it has improved hugely over the last 3 or 4 years. And the level of complaints they are getting in, they really don't feel, as Mike said, that there is the need for that extra patrolling between those hours. And that's my viewpoint on that one. I'll say no more.
Thank you, Linda. Could I also refer to the pub watch system? I understand from, I forget where it was, maybe in the Community Safety Partnership, that each landlord now is on Instagram. They have their own Instagram account where they are continually in touch with each other. And recently, I know of several youngsters on some areas have been banned from all premises. So it does appear to be working, as Linda pointed out. Well, I think we're coming close to a resolution now. I must say that I do like Fran's third resolution there about due consideration to late night noise be included within the 3 resolutions, and of course I think I've got general consensus about those 3 minor amendments which I mentioned at the beginning. Also, the fact within that third resolution, Fran, that the late night levy be kept under review, and bear in mind the number of protests or comments or consideration to be considered in the future, maybe at the next meeting. There was one other point that Fran mentioned earlier, before the meeting actually, about the number of tens. And although Linda said that they can be objected to, I was quite amazed that someone with a personal license can actually apply for 50 tens a year. I mean, I've got a personal license, as far as I remember, a long time ago. But I mean, that is incredible. And I wondered if within the 2003 Act there is any possibility of local variation. But as Linda pointed out, she's shaking her head now, so I assume that's a no. But I take it as a assurance, a little bit of assurance that they can be objected to if there are enough reasons and evidence to do so. I can hear shuffling. Oh, Linda, your hand's up again. Sorry.
You're quite right there, Steve. But what we also have to take into consideration, the process of a temporary event notice is, generally a temporary event notice is presented to the licensing office with 10 days prior to the event. We like it before that, if at all possible. But there is also what you call a late 10 that comes in 5 days prior to an event.
Yeah.
Now, a late 10, the police can turn down and there can be no redress. An ordinary 10, a standard 10, they can appeal if it has been turned down. They generally don't, because we don't turn them down unless there's good reason and there's evidence to say why they shouldn't have that temporary event notice. But they have to go through the legal process, and they are all looked at for what they're presenting and for the benefit that they are going to bring in actually holding that temporary event notice.
Okay, yes, that's on, by the way, for those who have the agenda in front of it, it's 2.19, permitted temporary events. Very well written, couple of paragraphs that, but I did have a couple of questions over the staggering amount of tens that may be applied for. Okay, well, we have 3 resolutions, as far as I remember. If I go back to the beginning.
Steve, it's Jonathan. Can I just make a couple of comments on the policy?
Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yep, don't see you on screen. That's fine.
It was just a couple of things through the policy. On page 44, just to note that list needs updating, I think. There's just 1 or 2 things that don't quite tally. And on page 33, it was just a question on the licensing panel. It just struck me as, wouldn't it be obvious if the chairman of licensing is automatically on hearing panels? But maybe there's a reason why that's not the case.
The reason I wasn't on the mermaid appeal is that I've captained the darts team, so therefore who am I looking for now? The monitoring officer advised me that I couldn't take part in it. But other than that, yes, I agree.
I mean, presumably then the wording would be something on the lines of, chairman of licensing or deputy chairman in his or her absence. It just seems a fairly kind of obvious thing to me, but as I say, if there's any good reason why it shouldn't be the case. Otherwise, I'd suggest that as an amendment.
So, which paragraph was that, Jonathan?
So it's on page 31 of the report pack. 33. Licensing panel.
Chairman, if I may, as someone who helps put together panels, you do need to have quite an open mind in terms of who should be on the panel for whatever possible reasons that they perhaps shouldn't. So you never know. So we could put chairman and vice chairman there, but it could be that an applicant is known or a personal friend of the chairman or vice chairman, and that would obviously put them in a I'm in an awkward position then. So we do need to be flexible in terms of those panels, not just in the panel of first instance, but in, should there be an appeals panel, we then need to put together another 3 people who again have no connection to the applicant or the premises.
Well, I certainly take that as a principle. I think more the case of, in the first instance, shouldn't it be the chairman of licensing is one of those people, unless there's a good reason why he or she shouldn't be.
Can I step in there, please?
Yes, certainly, Linda.
Good morning. Whenever we have any issues with regard to licensed premises that may need to either go under review or go to a panel, the chair of licensing is always consulted first, and that goes without saying. And I think Steve can verify that any issues that arise, I always consult with him prior to anything else. With regard to the panel, you have to bear in mind that we are a small community, that we do live very closely together, and that when you are putting a panel together, that it's not just the connections they may have personally. You have to consider the location of where they are living in response to any hearing or complaint that has been received, because we have to try and make sure that our panel is going to approach any subject objectively, that then there is no risk of any of their personal experiences, be it where they live or who they know, that are brought into that committee meeting. And I think, as Andy quite rightly said, which is why we are very open with when we pick a panel, it's which members will come forward, because that is always very difficult, because we've all got busy lives, as have you. But I can assure you that the chair of the licensing committee is consulted on a regular basis with anything that needs to be raised within the licensing process.
Yes, thank you, Linda. I think also because we've got 15 members, it is a fairly wide-ranging selection anyway, and you cannot be on the licensing committee unless you've had training. So therefore, I would, in principle, I would prefer to leave it as it is. 5.1, paragraph 5.1. It seems. It looks a bit open-ended, but I think that may be one of its strengths.
Chairman, can I bring up another point?
Yes, certainly, Andy.
On the same topic then of licensing panels and obviously my role in selecting them, another thing to consider is when we have applications or hearings with regard to off-islands, it can put off-island council. So, for example, you could say that if there is an application from St Martin's, that Councillor Smith should be on it as the St Martin's councillor. Now, we obviously know that they're small communities and that the Councillor Smith might feel awkward being on that panel, even though on paper, it would seem like the right thing to do and a logical thing to do. But it is obviously up to each councillor when we approach them as to whether or not they feel it is something that they want to do.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Andy. And actually, for the last 2 applications from the Martins, I specifically didn't put myself forward on the panel for reasons that I'm, in some way have some, connection to those businesses. So, yeah, inevitably is going to be the case on off-islands for a lot of councillors, I think. But on the wider point, I'm happy to leave it as it is. I'm just sort of wanted to throw it up for discussion, really.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Right, I think we've reached.
Can I make a quick point?
Yes, sorry, Steve.
Steve Sims. Pardon me. Just wanted to say that myself, Avril, and Dan have now done 2 of these, and most members haven't done any. I did think I put this in the email chain when I was going around for it, but I think we could try and get members who haven't done these things before to do them. So, some of us who've done them before, one of us at least on the panel, but try and get members who've not done them before, because they're quite instructive. And it's obviously useful to have people with experience of these things to call on.
Yeah, good point. A very good point. Okay, well, we have two recommendations on the in the report. There is a third one. I'll read the first one out, that members review the consultation responses submitted and take the responses into account in reviewing the licensing policy, which we've done over Halo and the late night levy. And secondly, that members approve the reviewed licensing policy set out in Appendix A for submission to full council for adoption. And thirdly, I think Fran's third amendment was, or third recommendation was, that due consideration be given to a late night levy. Is that correct, Fran? In the future?
That members of the committee consider the issue of late night noise and its ramifications and bring to the next committee another discussion as to the possibility of looking at a late night levy. But I would just say the licensing officer had her hand up. Did you wish to recognise her, Chair?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, sorry, Linda. You haven't got your hand up. No. Yeah.
I did, but it's fine. It's fine, Steve. You can move on. We missed the point, so we can carry on.
A legacy hand again. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know do members are happy to take those three recommendations as a whole?
Excuse me, Chair, I think I need a seconder.
Yeah, sorry. Is there a seconder? Oh, Avril, you've got your hand up. Seconded by Councillor Avril Mumford. Are there any against those three recommendations? Then I take it as passed and call the meeting closed. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.